Hey everybody, what's up? It's Booksy. Today is Monday, November 27th. We're talking about AMC stock here. Quick update for the week ahead. So last week, just to recap, we had a bit of a shrinking iteration going into Monday, and at which point we really just broke down. I mean, you can see that I know it's kind of hard because my chart's a big mess right now. It looks like a bunch of meaningless lines. Um, I've been working on kind of the bigger picture, and I didn't clean it up for this video, so oh well. But basically, when we had this breakdown a while back, that kind of put us in a mode of downward, where we were going to come down and probably head into the sixes because we're going to break below the bottom at some point. Once that happened, my initial thought was that we were going to come up and retest the 950s early on and then come back down. Based on what's happened, it kind of can go either way, but I still think that, unfortunately, based on the way that this moved, I'm not overly positive about any kind of I don't think this is like the spring action. Does that make sense? Because unfortunately, you only have like one support built earlier. And if we had turned up here, like let's say we came low and we, instead of breaking down at 737 or 733 or whatever it was, let's say we push back to the upside, I would have been a little more inclined to think that we actually did have a floor and that we were bouncing off of it here and then we were coming back down in a spring action later. Unfortunately, the way this is set up right here, this really could be, and I think Stockfather talked about this pretty clearly, this could be a phase B bottom. I mean, it's not even like necessarily a spring because of how big this range is. So it kind of lends a lot of possibility. I'm not going to get into too much detail this morning, though. I want to just kind of cut to the chase. Because I know a lot of folks, they're interested in the understanding like how I get to something or whatever, and I appreciate that. I do, and I like to try to explain things as best I can and give you the best technical reason for things. But all the same, I feel like a lot of folks are going to be kind of anxious about this move. We just want to know what's coming next. So I'm going to give you my 2 cents about it, and then probably kind of relate that to the market on the whole. So. All right, so point being, this may not be actually any kind of a spring right now because, unfortunately, based on the way this went, by coming high earlier, it kind of posits itself like, oh, we're going to go down to the bottom of the range, and then this could easily just be a phase B bottom. I agree with Stockfather that there's a possibility this comes right back down. A lot of times it does. I think we're missing a bit of that kind of downward move. Still, if you're looking at the way this is breaking down, I went through all the different RSI levels, and it's kind of a mixed bag. We definitely have broken out on the trend. We've done that in both price action. I know it's hard to see, but it's this yellow line right here. And we've also done that on the RSI. So really, we're just looking for that back test. I think it's going to be somewhere near like 626. Could be a little bit higher. I think we should come back down and test that creek breakout. I don't feel like we did a sufficient test here on Friday. I mean, the volume was weird and low, and a lot of selling pressure going on right here. You can see right over here on the VRVP, it's actually predominantly selling up here. So I think that we're likely to come back down one more time, and then we should at that point see a pretty decent move back up. Because we've already broken out of this downtrend, the main downtrend that we started back on Friday, November 3rd, that gives you a pretty good idea of like, okay, well, that's a pretty long-term downtrend, so we should have a decent reaction to the upside. We're finally out of it. We had come close before, and certainly last Monday we were pushing right up against it most of the day. But this is actually over the top of it. So good news is we're out of that trend. So I think once we get a back test, we should expect to see some kind of a move to the upside. I've got a couple different targets here. So if we can get over roughly 750, because that's this particular top where we distributed from. If we can get over 750, I think we're going to go to 960. I really do. I think we're going to see a big push. I think it's going to be kind of a rally. I don't necessarily know how long this is going to last as a top, but it could be, a decent amount of distribution here. So a little bit more accumulation down bottom, and then probably a big push-up reaction. I don't think, it's going to be the big push. There's a small chance, in my mind, that we continue up to the range of 1243 up to about 15. There's a whole nother video I'm going to have to do, and it's not a fun video to have to do, but it's a video that I'd like to do, and it has to do with us having like a massive push up here and then a massive drop after. And I'll get into that maybe tomorrow. But for today, I do think that it's possible that by roughly next week, December 5th, we're back up around 950. Maybe after that, going into mid-December, we could see another bigger push above the top here. But I think if that happens, it does confirm in my mind what I've been thinking, which is that it's possible, if not probable, that we do get a big drop after that. If, on the other hand, we reject around 960, I think we're going to come back down to this intersection around 490. I think this is a really important intersection for a lot of reasons. I can't get into like every little detail here, unfortunately, but I will say that it's not like it's not actually as complicated as it sounds. Basically, we have like two major creeks that we built, and I know they look kind of wonky, but I think we've got two major creeks that we built on the cat ears, as we call them. So if you look at the big picture, this is typically where AMC has some kind of reaction. If you look at the big picture here, you'll see what I mean. Basically, like, look at the structure from back over here, all right? It's essentially like a model of the larger one, all right? Which is you've got the cat paw, you've got the double ears, okay? And usually what you see is if this works out, you end up with a little bit of a coming together. You see this of creeks, okay? And what this is, if you want to think about it like a shrinking iteration, is that each of these points is actually kind of like a distributive marker and establishes kind of a new top, right? And interestingly, they're all the same spot on, it's really like here. They're all the same spot on the shrinking iteration. So if you're thinking about waves, you can see the waves, right, as they move across. So that's one way to think about it, is like, oh yeah, it's shrinking and they're jumping these little waves. And so these are your creek lines. I talked about this in that video, the long form video that I did. And you could see like, oh yeah, there they are. After each of those tops, right, you're kind of presented with, and this one I kind of like fudged because I made it go back and test it, but really this is the next top. So yeah, anyways, I messed it up, but you get the idea. So the point is that when we look at this as a shrinking, those particular waves are setting up like creeks, right, that you're later going to come back and test. It just so happens that those creeks often intersect at a particular point, and that's usually where you end up bouncing. It's not necessarily the point at which you take off, though. You can see down here, this is kind of like where it hits the bottom and then it goes back up. But it didn't actually just take off here. Now, the trajectory in and trajectory out ended up matching for the last marker, 56 and 56. You see this? So those are pretty good indications as well. and you can use those to kind of help determine whether or not you're going to bounce and where you might bounce and all that stuff. Okay, so I was going to try to show you. I always forget where it is, the bars pattern thing. So there it is. So I was going to try to show you like what I mean by shrinking here. So you could take this and shrink it down, and you could see it's like the same basic structure again. All right, and then if you do it again here, you can see it's the same basic structure again, right, until ultimately it makes a move. So that being said, all right, if you zoom way out, and this is kind of the most I'm going to do in terms of like big picture analysis right this moment. There's other stuff I want to talk about, but this is one of the big ones. If you zoom way out, right, and you look at this big picture, you can kind of see how, oh, it's pretty darn similar to what we experienced here. Maybe unfortunately so, but it's really similar, right? There's a lot of the same kind of patterning. So you do have kind of this cat ear like structure right here in that top, and you've got like a double. This is the reactive move right here, and then you've got the kind of actual cat ear set up. So if that's the case, we should be able to then do the same thing that we did here on the bigger picture, and I think you can. So I'm trying to do that right now, and basically what I think. And I know some of you are thinking about this, and you're like, well, what if we're just doing the middle and we're going to drop further? Well, we might. And that's kind of what I've been saying about, the possibility we come up and then end up coming back down. It could be a very, very long time before that happens, but we'll see. Or it could be really fast. The point is that, like, what I'm now doing is looking at, all right, well, where are those major creeks, right? And I think it's pretty clear that if you look at this structure, this is the same kind of thing right here. It's forming that bottom. It's very similar to this guy, right, but smaller, which is very similar to this guy, which is very small. And so you've got this kind of easy one right here, which I think maps out pretty well. I don't know if it's perfect. Could be a little bit off. The second one is the next peak, which is right here after the breakout. You can see the breakout and the retest that happened back in February, and then it pushes up pretty high. This one's a little trickier because it's harder to draw the downward motion here. Like, it's not really clear exactly where that is. So what I did is I looked at this particular hook from September and then where that actually catches right after, and it is a pretty solid line there. So again, not to waste any of your time, but you can see that's the press up, and then there's a check here on it as well after the breakout. So this one, interestingly, ends up being this bottom. This one ends up being this top. And then you look at where the breakout was, it's right here on that particular creek. It's pretty straightforward here. And then it jumps both of them, holds it. And now look at where we bounced. We actually bounced right off of this line. So I think, again, that intersection is actually much lower at like 490. Okay, now I didn't go any further than that. There should be another one here, like right here. And I did do it, but I'm not positive about this one just yet. I think that it's a kind of a tricky one because we know it went really far in extended hours. So it makes me kind of question, and I also am not 100% sure I grabbed the right marker for that. I think I did. I think you grab like just the peak here and then move forward, but we'll see. So a strong inclination that 490 could end up being a longer term bottom for us in the near future. So in order to get there, I did a mirroring of the trajectories here. So like up, down, up, and you can see it actually works really well with this 960 hit. If it were to go up to like 15 or something, it would just be way more severe. That's all. Like it'd have to be really, really tight and explosive. I'm inclined to think it's not going to do that, but I think if anything, we may get to this 1240 area, not necessarily get to 15. I don't think it's going to be that dramatic, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But that being said, there is a strong chance that we have a back test up here, and I can't get into that right now. But either way, I'm looking at a bottom short term, and then another push up to the top, and then perhaps we come back down for an actual like low. I know this is very different than what we had talked about initially, but initially I was thinking like this action was going to happen up here. Does that make sense? So that changes things because it's setting up really low, right? And I don't think there's going to be just some massive run here out of nowhere, because I think that the S&P is coming up to a top. I think it's going to try to go for probably a bit of a pullback here, and then we'll see if it pushes up one more time. It broke the main trend it had, so we'll see. I get the feeling like it's going to come down, find a bottom, and then push again, and probably go to all-time highs somewhere above like, 460 or something like that. I mean, originally when we look at this bottom, the diamond bottom that we had, and this is a bigger picture one. Actually, I think it should be like 470. I said 460, but yeah, it's way up here. Originally, we looked at this diamond bottom structure that we had, and we measured it out, and it was like pretty far up there, I think the initial targets we got were correct. We had 430 and 450, and those both hit. And that was way back here, which is kind of neat. It took way longer than I would have expected, though, because normally it does follow the trajectory out pretty fast and or pretty tightly, and it didn't really do it this time. So that's 46 degrees. Maybe it did. I don't know. Being a little bit. Yeah, not really. It kind of like left it behind. It got weird. Yeah, you could see like it kind of followed it initially and then just sort of left. We could use a more mild one, I guess, and like cut the difference, split the difference, since this was like a 50-50 kind of thing. Do something like that. Say it's like 36. That might give us a better result, more accurate result. Yeah, that looks a little bit better. Yeah, sure. I think it's a bit of a challenge. So yeah, maybe right here. This looks about right. I'm centering it on the bottom here. So anyways, point is originally we had a target that went to the breakout here on the diamond. I believe it happens to be like right here. It's actually pretty low. So this target had us going up to like 490. So are we past that point? Yeah, we are. So I think that it's possible I'm either measuring it wrong. You could look at the breakout as being over here, which considerably different. That's like 500. Again, that's kind of like, well, we're past that point now. So it doesn't even really matter that much. I think 490 is probably more likely, but the point is that typically when you have a widening like this and it breaks out, you do return back to the top where the widening starts, and that would be around the 480s. So my expectation is that we would hit that 480 area probably. And that's before anything else happens. And if it's going to be anything like the 2008 crash in that particular sense, then you'd end up with a top that goes slightly higher here and then comes down real low for a test. That's kind of crazy, but that's what I think would happen if it ends up being a giant M. And you can see it never really checked this guy, so this would be long term, like where we might go back. And I know this sounds like really gloom and doom, but I think realistically, like, it kind of makes sense to me. So be like this, that this is maybe the way it happens, that you get kind of a new all-time high and then, distribute going down after December. So this is kind of like a Santa rally. This would be when AMC is making its little burst, and then some kind of a distribution down. I don't know how long it takes, but probably through January or something like that. Now, if it were to break down here and not do any kind of an SOS, which is still possible, I mean, you could still have an SOS at the top. It'll look long-term regardless. I think it'll be a month or so. And then if it were to break down, you can see like, well, it'd have to go pretty far to get back down to this creek. And I think ultimately like that's where it would probably go. And, we could be looking at something pretty far out in the future in that case, but I don't really know if that's what's going to happen. It's just kind of there. It's a possibility. We'll see what happens if it gets to all-time highs. But that does kind of correlate to what I'm thinking about here in terms of a rally going into mid-December and then coming back down after. So all of that being said, I hope you guys have a great week, and I will catch you later.